today. As Brian mentioned, this is part 3 of a 3-part series. The first one was an intro to GIS mapping and showed some examples of how folks are using it. Last week we did the beginning of a tutorial in Google Fusion Tables, and today we're doing some more tutorial on that. My name is Christina Sanabria. I'm at LSC, and thank you to Brian Rowe for helping make this possible. And as Brian mentioned, it's being recorded, and also phone lines are muted, so just send questions through the chat. So here are our objectives for today. Last week we created maps with dots that represented office locations and schools. Today we're going to be creating maps of shapes or areas. We're going to discuss the additional files we need to create those maps, and then we're going to go through the process. And then we're going to create a multi-layer map to show multiple data sets at the same time. Before we get started, stepping back, what do I mean by areas? So this map is showing the number of children placed in foster care by county in 2012 for Ohio, and each county is being represented by a dot, and it's probably the geographic center of that county. And this is helpful, but I can't see the size or the shape of the county. I can't see where the borders are. So in some instances, this would work for you, but sometimes you might want to display the counties as shapes, technically called polygons. So this is the same map, but it's showing the counties as polygons. Now I can see a little bit more clearly the data. So this would be useful anytime you're doing counties like this one, or zip codes, census tracts, congressional districts, police precincts, anything where it's a region, not a specific location. So in order to create a map like this, we need a KML file, specifically one that contains the boundaries for the area we're trying to map. So stepping back, what is a KML file? So KML is just a file type. You're going to see .kml the same way that when you see .doc, you know it's a Word document. And this file tells Google where and how to draw the geographic regions. If you have done other GIS before and you're familiar with SHP files or shape files, this is basically the same thing. It's just another version of it. Google uses KML file formats. And there are tools out there to convert shape files into KMLs and KMLs into shapes. So that is available for you. So why do you need a KML? What we're going to do is we're going to upload the KML to Fusion Tables, just the same way as when we uploaded the Excel spreadsheet. And then we're going to merge that Fusion table with the KML, with the geographical data. We're going to merge it with another Fusion table with the statistical data so that we can now have a Fusion table that has both the statistical and the geographic data, and then we can map it. Couple words about where to find KMLs. The U.S. Census provides KMLs for counties and census tracts, and the URL is right there. Another source, though, because you might want to map regions besides counties and census tracts, I would just try Googling. And there's also GeoCommons. And GeoCommons is a public community of users who are making maps for public use, and they actually have their own web-based mapping software that you might want to check out. But in addition to that, what I like about it is that you can go and browse other people's maps and then download them as KMLs or as SHPs. So this might actually be a good resource for getting those KMLs of those regions that you are looking for. All right. Okay, and of course you can chat your questions in at any time, but are there any questions about KMLs at this point? Okay, so let's get started with our first project. And for this project, let's suppose that my organization, we have an elder law task force, and we want to look at data as a part of advocacy planning, and we want to know, are there any geographic areas of concentration of poverty, and how does that profile break down? Are there, in terms of age or gender? So we want to get a clearer picture of poverty in the older adult community. Okay, question. How would one make your own KML file, for example, to show office service areas? Okay, that is an advanced feature or an advanced step. I'm happy to talk with you afterwards. This can be done. I'm happy to talk to you about how you can do this. Basically, you need another different piece of software that can let you. My guess is that your office service areas are composed of counties or other things that you would be able to get of other public geographies. So you would basically be altering that file to kind of condense or collapse a group of counties into chunks, if you will, which are what your office service areas probably look like if you're like most programs. So I'm happy to talk to you afterwards and work through that. Okay, so for right now, we're sticking with the standard geography. We are going to do this by census tracts. Here is a picture of what our final project is going to look like. And we have our info window. We've got it color-coded by according to the data. So the steps we're going to take are, as always, we're going to structure the information so that we can map it. We're going to merge the two fusion tables together, the one with the poverty data and the one with the geographic data. And then we're going to style the polygons with colors. We're not going to go through in detail the last two bullets, but you would also want to set up your info window and customize it, and then you'd need to share and publish the map. So census tracts, why are we using census tracts for this project? In case you're not familiar with them, they are geographic regions that are defined for the purpose of taking a census. Every 10 years, when there's a new census and there are population shifts, the census tracts actually get redrawn. So you want to make sure that you have the most recent census tracts that there are. And the census tracts, they're smaller than a county. They're going to provide more granular data. They usually coincide with city limits or other administrative areas, and the folks at the census, they're not just drawing, random shapes and calling them census tracts. They're really trying to create homogeneous areas of population so that it's a meaningful geography. They're frequently used and tried and true, so yep, go census tracts. Okay, so in order to get the poverty data, I went to the American Fact Finder, and this is the URL is right there. It's a data portal that combines data from the census, the American Community Survey, and others. And you might go if you're not familiar with the American Fact Finder, just start out in the guided search and check out some of the topics that are available. And then if you already know what table you're looking for, then you could go right to that. But so I've already downloaded my data, and I had uploaded it to a fusion table. So this is what it looks like. We have columns for each. It's actually broken down in lots of categories. So here's the total population below poverty level, the total male population below poverty level, and then it's breaking it down in lots of age categories. So younger than 5 years, 5 years old, 6 to 11, and so on. The other column I want to draw your attention to is this ID2 column. And it looks like a string of numbers, and they all start with 39, and if I look at them, I'm noticing that every row, which is each row is one census tract, every row has a different number here. So let's talk a little bit about what those numbers are. These are FIPS codes, and FIPS stands for Federal Information Processing Series, and they're kind of an ID number for geographical entities. And they're a unique identifier so that we can merge our tables successfully. If you remember last week, we were merging data about schools, and we had a special ID number for the schools so that we could get an exact match. So this is a similar thing, basically, except this time we're working with geographical entities. And I'm spending some time on this because I think it's really important to be familiar with these codes. Right now, the census tract is listed right here in a very specific way, and if my other data source doesn't have it listed exactly the same way, it's not going to be a match. Even if you're working with counties, you might think, oh, well, of course, they're all going to be listed the same, but I've found variations in spelling, or maybe there's a space or not a space. So I really recommend that you get familiar with the FIPS codes. So let's break it down a little bit so we know what we're looking at. Every state or territory is going to have a 2-digit code, and 39 is the code for Ohio. Then every county is going to have a 3-digit code. So 001 is the county code for Adams County, Ohio. And then 7701 is the census tract. So here's the full code for each of those census tracts. So now that we've talked about this, I'm sure you're curious about the FIPS codes in your area, and if they're easy to find, just Google something like Ohio County FIPS list, and you'll find several listings of the FIPS codes in your area, just so you can get familiar with them, so when you come across a FIPS code, you know what it is you're looking at. Are there any questions about this piece? Okay, let's move on. Going back to our data right here. Well, here, again, like I said, there's the different age buckets, and here are the men, and over here are the women. And I can't see it very clearly, so on this slide, what I've done is listed out, these are all of the different columns that were available from that table that I downloaded. So here are all of the columns that are in my Fusion table. But if you remember, we were trying to make a map for the Elder Law Task Force. So the columns I'm really interested in are these 4. And right now, the data is being reported separately in 4 different columns. But I really want to put it together because I want to know about this population as a whole. So I can do that using a formula column. Basically, a formula column allows us, it's like a calculated field in other softwares. It's going to let us perform math using the data from our data set. So we're going to create a formula which is basically the name of the first column with a single quote around it, plus the name of the next column, plus the name of the next column, plus the name of the next column. So this formula is going to add all of the pieces together into a single piece data point. So I'm just going to copy this right here and go back into my Fusion table. So to add a formula column, I'll go to Edit, Add Formula Column, and here I can give it a name. So I'll say total older adult population, and I'll give it a description. men and women age 65 and over. And I'll paste my formula here. And I'll click Save. So here, someone pointed out that these dashes could be mistaken for minus symbols. So that is true. The way that Fusion Tables knows that they're not minus symbols is using these quotes. So I'm using these dashes because that was the exact name of the column. So if I go over here, for example, and I hover, you can see that the name of the column is below poverty, actually below space poverty space dash space and so on. So I need it to be exactly the same, and so I have my dash here. That's why I have the dash in my formula, but I've wrapped the whole name of the column in these single quotes. So that's how come Fusion Tables is not getting confused, because it knows that this is the name of the column that I want to add together. But good question, thank you. Okay, so back to here, I added my formula column, and I can scroll all the way over here, and here is my new column, and it has added together those 4 pieces of data into a single column, so I can see my total older adult population altogether. So now, having done that, that means that I have prepared my statistical data, and I'm ready to move on to my geographical data. So I was able to obtain a KML file of the census tracts in Ohio. So last time when we created a new Fusion table, just like last time, we're going to click on the red Create button and click on Fusion Table. And this time, instead of uploading an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV, I'm just going to find my KML file. There it is. And click Next. This is going to take a while, so it's a good time to send in your questions. Okay, here is a preview, and I'll click Next. I could rename this if I wanted, and Finish. So, send any questions you have. As we're waiting, it's importing the KML into a Fusion table, and there we have it. Okay, so a couple things to point out. You'll notice that almost all of these column headers have the number 10 after them. If you remember, I mentioned before that the census tracts are updated every time there's a census, so this 10 indicates that this is the 2010 census tract, which is good because we don't want to be using 2000 census tracts because they're different. So I'm noticing that the 10s are there, so that's good. Then there's a lot of things that look like gibberish, but I have this GeoID column, and looking closely at it, it looks like something familiar, and if you are thinking FIPS codes, you are right. These are FIPS codes. They all are starting with 39, and so this is great because, as we discussed, if I didn't have a column that had the exact match, then I wouldn't be able to merge my 2 tables. So we're going to be able to use the FIPS codes to do the merge. And the last column I want to point out is this geometry column. And it looks like there's nothing there. It just says KML. But this is the column that actually contains the location data. So if you remember, there are 4 different types of data. There's text, number, date and time, and location. So Fusion Tables has recognized that this is a location column, and actually, yeah, Fusion Tables has identified this as a location column, and it typically does that by default, but doesn't hurt to check. So that is great. It is here ready to go. So now we're going to do the merge between this Fusion Table, which has the geometry column, the geographical information, and this Fusion Table, which has the data that we want to map. So, File, Merge, and here we have the Ohio Census Tracts Fusion Table. That's the one we want to merge with. Click Next. And it's asking us which column do we want to use to do the merge. And we want to choose the column that has the FIPS code. So that's ID 2 and GeoID 10.
Seeing a lot of FIPS codes and digits, tracks.
I'm kind of hearing a voice, maybe asking a question or making a comment, but I didn't hear that super clearly. So if you want to repeat that or type it in, I'd love to hear your question or comment. Okay, so we've selected the correct column and click Next. And then here it's showing me all of the data from my first Fusion Table and all of the columns from my second Fusion Table. And I don't need all of this extra information. I do definitely need to keep the geometry column. That's the one with the geographical information. So make sure to keep that box checked and click Merge. And here it is. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so I'll take a moment to edit this name. Let's call this Map for Elder Law Task Force Population by Census Tract. Okay. And so here are all of our data points, and then at the very end, our geometry column. So let's take a look at our map. Great. Okay, so noticing a couple of odd things here. First, it looks like there's some census tracts missing, but have no fear. If we zoom in, we will see them. There's just some very, very small census tracts. So when you're at a zoom level far away, it's going to look like they're not there, but just zoom in and you will see them. And the other thing is that right now all of the census tracts are red, but wasn't it supposed to show us our data with color? Well, it's okay. We haven't configured it yet. We have to tell Fusion Tables how we want it to display, but our data is there. All right, so we want to style our polygons. So let's go to Change Feature Styles. And here under Polygons, we're going to click Fill Color. And one easy way to just get started is with gradient. And it is basically what it sounds like. We need to choose the column that we want to be used to make the color choices. So let's click Total Older Adult Population. And by default, the range is 0 to 100, but it looks like there's some census tracts that have more than 100 people identified as older folks in poverty. So we need to click Use This Range, and Fusion Tables has updated this. So now it's going to show the census tracts with the smallest poverty population, a light green, and then the ones with the largest population, a darker green. So that's basically what it would look like. But you could customize this even more if you don't like green, or maybe you want to use different colors. You could do that. Purple's not showing up, except. Okay, and then If you want to have more control over the specific values that are going to be displayed, the different colors, we can go to buckets. And again, we need to select the column that is going to be driving the color choices. And we could add some more buckets. Again, I need to click use this range so that it uses the full range of the data. And here I can set up the exact color breaking points that I want. And I can set the exact colors that I want. So once you have it how you want it, you can just click save and your map has been recolored. So I'm going over here to the coast of Ohio, and as you can see, we have some shape out in the water. And a lot of times when you access and when you're able to get a KML or a shape file, they're going to look like this. They're going to have water, the water portions in them. And for some people, like if you were a marine biologist or something like that, you would need the water. But for our purposes, since this was a demo, I just kept the water here. If it was really important to you to display this map and not show the water, you'd have to do something called clipping or trimming. And if someone's interested in that, we can talk later, and I'd be happy to walk you through that. Okay, so not going to go through this part in detail because we already did this last week, but again, you would next want to add a legend here in Change Feature Styles. You would want to customize your info window. You would want to edit your sharing settings so that it's anyone with the link. And then you would go here to publish it and get that snippet of HTML code so that you could put it on your website if that's what you wanted to do. And when you did all of that, it would look like this. And you'd be able to have your users click around and explore the map. Okay. Are there any questions about this part so far? Okay. Send any questions in as you have them. We'd be happy to answer them. All right. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to move on. Question. Nope, but it will take some practice. Yes, it will. Yeah, and the good news is that this is recorded, so you can watch it again, and we're available. My email will be, it's on like the last slide, I think. So if you need some more help, please feel free to reach out. But yes, do it, practice, go. You can make maps. It would be very cool. All right. So let's move on to the next project. And let's say that in this case, our Elder Law Task Force let me know that housing is an area of law that is impacting many older adults, and they want to analyze the availability of affordable housing options. And they want to know, are there sufficient affordable housing options? Are the options located in the areas with the greatest need? So in order to, and this is what our final project is going to look like. So we have our polygons that are shaded in, and then we have our dots, which are representing each of the housing options. So to get this data, the first thing I did is I did a lot of Googling. Okay, is there a color that shows up better in the central cities of Ohio, especially small pockets, when looking at the state as a whole? So I chose if you're zoomed out, no color is really going to show up. There are a couple of ideas I have on that question. First, you could filter the data so that you could show only Remember last week we did filtering, so let's say you wanted to show only those census tracts above a certain threshold. You could do that. And then here, another thought is that this is showing the number of older adults in poverty that were captured by the American Community Survey. But another thought is you could use another formula column and you could divide, let's say divide the number of seniors in poverty by the total number of seniors, so that you could do a like a proportional map. So that might, like right now we're seeing a lot of yellow, and if we need to see like this county, for example, this census tract, there are 204 older adults in poverty, but it has a very large population size in general, so that could be another way to have it pop out at you. Another thought is to, you could embed the map a couple of times, so you could have a map like showing the whole state, and then, you know, maybe you wanted to focus just on one area, then you could have another map showing, you know, zoomed in. So those are some ideas just off the top of my head. I think just experimenting might be the best. But again, if you're looking at the whole state, it doesn't matter what color you choose. Like it's going to be really hard to see if you're zoomed all the way out. So, okay, where were we? We are talking about the housing options. So, as I was saying, first thing I did was a lot of Googling. I didn't know if this data was going to be available at all or where it might be. So, you know, don't be afraid of getting your hands dirty and investing some time searching. Because ultimately I found this page. It's the Ohio Housing Locator. It's a free searchable database of affordable and accessible rental housing throughout Ohio, and it's got, looks like it's a partnership of several different agencies in the state. And when I did the search through it, I was able to check this little box so that it would give me the results only for housing providers for older adults. So I was able to find 702 housing options throughout the state. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So after I downloaded it and set it up as a Excel and tinkered with it there to make sure that I structured my data, I uploaded it to Fusion Tables, and here's what that looks like. I've got the housing facility name. This is the URL of each facility's name in the Ohio Housing Locator website. So if you clicked on it, it would give you a little bit more information about that particular facility. And then got some other information. Oh, of course, the address, all in one column, as we have discussed, and the phone number, some other information about it. So our map looks like this. So there it is. So what we want to do now is layer this map over that map. And there's not a way to do this in Fusion Tables itself, but Fusion Tables has many wizards and tools, a lot of ways that you can extend this. And one of the wizards that's out there is the Layers wizard. So let me put it here so you can see. Here's the URL. And so basically what we're going to do is input the link from one of our Fusion Tables and then put that layer on the map and then add the next layer that we want. And this will give us another snippet of code so that of yet another map, which is going to be the combined map with the multiple layers. Okay, so let's go for it. So first, I want to do the bottom layer, which is the poverty data. And I, of course, want to set up my sharing settings, and I need to make it anyone with a link, or else no one will be able to see it. Okay. Then I'm going to go to Publish. And before, when we went to this window, we were picking up this HTML snippet. For this step, it actually wants the link. So I'm copying that and going over here, and let's put the layer on the map. There it is. So there it is. It's a preview of it. So now we're going to put the next layer on top. So again, I'd want to make sure that my sharing was set to anyone with the link. And then here, publish, and copy this link. And over here, back in the wizard, add layer, and paste that in there. Put that layer on the map, and so here is my combined map with multiple layers. So I know that when I want to embed this on my page, I'm going to want the map to be a little larger. So here, I'm going to make this 700 by 700 pixels, and I'll click Update Map. It's actually moved it down here, where it has more room. So here again is my updated map. And then down below is the HTML code that I need to put into to embed my page or my map. And it looks a little longer, it looks a little bit more complicated than before when we were embedding the map directly from here. So it looks a little bit more complicated, but it's the same thing, just as if you were embedding a YouTube video on your website. So you would just copy and paste this, and when you did that, your map would look like this. So here I have, and I can click on the census tracts, and I can also click on the different housing options. So I've got both of my layers there together. Are there any questions about anything that we've done today? If there are, please send them in. Okay, we're going to start winding down here. And a lot of the questions that we've heard from folks have had to do with data. So let's close by having a little data pep talk. So here are the data resources that I used today. And again, I point you to Legal Services of Northern California's resource list for data, demographics, and statistics as a starting place. But really, the take-home message is don't be afraid to search. I wish that there were a single place where you could get all kinds of data, but there isn't. So just be prepared for that. Interesting data is findable, but it's going to take a little searching. So when you're practicing, start mapping your own data or contact your local partners. For example, for a couple projects that we've done, looking at possible PAI attorney volunteers, we were able to contact the bar associations in different states, and they were able to provide data on how many attorneys there were, how many private attorneys there were in each state, in each county. Or in one case, they even provided us the address information so that we could map it as dots. So again, reach out to your local partners and plan on searching. When you get the data, expect to have to do some manipulation for it to be data or for it to be map ready. All of the examples that I showed, I had already changed some columns, moved some things around. In the case of the housing data, it required a lot of cutting and pasting and rearranging. And so, just kind of budget that in. But when you find something that's useful, bookmark it and save it. If you noticed with the poverty data, I was really interested in the older adult community, but I kept all of those columns for all of the other age breakdowns, just as a reference because, next week, if someone needs a map on children in poverty, I don't want to have to go back and search for it. So keep it on file and organize it. And if you find something that's interesting, we'd love to know about it, so please share it. Last week we challenged you to start experimenting with maps. If anyone has done that, we would love to see what you've come up with. If you have any sample maps, if you have any questions that came up during that process, either right now through the chat or afterwards, please reach out. We'd be happy to answer any questions or help get you unstuck if you ran into any obstacles. And happy mapping. The recordings the URLs are posted. I think that Brian is also sending them through the chat. And check in on LRI for new content and contact us if you get stuck.
Yep. Yeah, the slides for this presentation are posted. The URL is in your chat. I also put a URL there for a survey to give feedback. We have had very positive feedback about this topic, and probably within the next 2.5 weeks, we'll put together kind of an informal roundtable discussion where individuals who are working on maps can come and ask questions. So we'll get that on the calendar soon. Our next training for LSNTAP is the basics of web analytics presented by Idealware, which is up next week. Our discussion of the baselines, the new LSC baselines, has been pushed to about 2 weeks out, so first week of June. We are working on getting a few people on that particular call that have a little more knowledge about them. But that's what's coming up. Thank you guys all for showing up. If you've got any questions, please feel free to email me directly also. I'm happy to help out and give resources or help find referrals if people need help on particular issues.
Great. And again, if any questions come up, you start with your mapping projects, let us know and we'd be happy to help.